Well, hello, everybody. This is Empowering Democracy. I'm your host, Joe Firestone. Tonight, I'm joined by Dee Piers, my friend, and the host of Around the World, Kay with Dee and Friends.
I'm happy to be here.
Thank you for being here, Dee.
You're welcome.
And topics are Death of a Nation, Turkish Opportunism, Destroying Syria, and the final topic that I added just at the end. Uh, Guess I'll call it a warrior update.
Hmm.
Okay, that won't be what it seems, but
Okay.
okay, that though should be very interesting. But I'm going to start off with the death of a nation.
First, share. Make sure you share out.
Okay, I will make sure I share out. Thank you
Uh,
for reminding me.
Yes, and I'm sharing, and everybody who's watching would appreciate if you can share out. Let everybody know Joe is on right now. It's
Okay.
so important to share.
Yes, and it's so important for even I to share,
Yes.
so people who follow me know that. Uh, oh, Steve Wolfbrand is back.
Oh,
Hey,
great.
how are you? Great to see you. Okay. So there we are. So I'm going to begin by saying hi to Steve Wolfbrand. Hi, Steve.
Yes, and welcome back. It's been a while.
Yes, it has.
I hope you're okay.
Yes, I hope so too. Very much. Okay, so I'm going to start us off with Death of a Nation. And that's based on the latest piece by Pepe Escobar. At least I think it's the latest piece. But uh, here it is. Share it to start with. Pick it up at the UNS review, which is the safest place to pick up one of his places. It's the safest place if you want to share out.
Yes, you don't get hit by it.
Yes, you don't get hit by Facebook if you share it out from here. So, Death of a Nation, Black Flags, also massacres, land grabs as vultures feed on the carcass, okay, of Syria. A strong visual there.
Definitely.
Definitely a strong visual from Pepe. So there he goes, or at least there they go. Those are the jihadis, of course, looking very military. Will the collective West rise to defend the remaining Syrian Christians when the black flags come to purge them? And Pepe goes on. The standard, um, um, like its modus operandi of the hegemon is always divide and rule. Cornered by the inexorable rise of the multimodal, italics mind reality, they saw an opening for an imperial reboot, betting everything on establishing the quote greater Middle East outline still during the Cheney era. The iron axis of Straussian neocons, Ziocons, and Old Testament psychos in Tel Aviv is no holds bar obsessed on destroying the axis of resistance using their transnational network of bloody killers to extend chaos and sectarian civil war all across West Asia. I love that prose, but I have to admit It's very, how shall we call it, very colorful. So
Yeah, he wanted to get a point across. You can see.
he did get the point across very, very well. Well, I'm sure most of you are quite clear on who the Ziocons are
Mm-hmm.
and the Old Testament psychos in Tel Aviv are, but you might not be aware of who the Straussian neocons are. There used to be a political philosopher, he's dead now, uh, but he was a refugee from the Nazis during the Second World War. And he came here and became a professor at the University of Chicago. He was a political theorist, a political philosopher. Even further, he was what they call a Platonist, that kind of of a political philosopher. And one thing he delighted in teaching was the idea, originally advanced by Plato, the idea of the kind of lie that is a noble one. Okay. Yeah, but noble lie.
Mm-hmm.
He was a very successful teacher of generations of people who learned of Plato from him and the other Greek philosophers too, and other political philosophers also. But they especially learned of lies that are these very noble lies. And uh, quite a number of neocons either studied with Strauss himself or became followers, okay, of Leo Strauss. He was a very influential little man. He was a little man. He must have been about 5'6" or something like that. And he was fairly thin, very animated, and a very good teacher. He had tremendous influence on generations of foreign policy people from his perch, okay, at the University of Chicago. In particular, he was very influential on people uh, in the Reagan administration and people in the Bush 41 administration and people in the Clinton administration
Mm.
and people in the Bush 43 administration. There were people who were Straussian types of neocons in all of those administrations. And they were largely the people uh, who thought in terms of the U.S. being the hegemon, okay, of the world, and some of them, okay, are still around and obsessed on destroying the axis of resistance, using their transnational network of bloody killers to extend chaos and sectarian civil war all across West Asia. Throughout this ideal scenario, continuing with the article, they dream of mortally hitting the head of the snake, Iran. And Sultan um, uh, uh, Erdogan, playing the role of useful patsy, has proclaimed a quote, bright period, unquote, for Syria has begun. Indeed, a bright period for black flag head choppers and Tel Aviv bombers and land grabbers feeding on the carcass, okay, of Syria.
Mm.
The Old Testament psychopathological killers, via over 350 strikes, have totally destroyed all the military infrastructure of the Syrian Arab Army, the SAA, which started this time of troubles with roughly 170,000 in that army. Uh, Weapons factories, also the munitions dumps, the bases, the fighter jets, including the Metza air base in Damascus, Russian anti-ship systems, ships themselves are the ones that are in Latakia, close to the Russian naval base, and air defense positions. In a nutshell, this is the NATO/Israel combo demilitarizing the former Syria with not as much as a peep from anybody in the Arab world of Islam, starting with the black flag killers that had taken the Damascus. Couple that with trademark land invasion / grabbing and Tel Aviv officially declaring a definitive annexation of the Golan, which legally belongs to Syria, and whose restitution has been demanded by the UN after the 1967 Civil War. The Old Testament psycho blitzkrieg. In parallel, Turkish aviation bombed the former Russian Syrian base in Kamishli in the extreme northeast of Syria. Yeah, not too far from the Iranian border. The pretext: prevent that weapons would be grabbed by US based Kurds and assorted Arab tribes. For the Russians, this may not have been a big deal, as there was enough time to evacuate precious assets from the east of the Euphrates. Russia has given asylum to formidable and crucially uncorruptible Suhail al-Hassan, a serious candidate to the top tactician and military strategist in the world today. Wow, I didn't realize he was so important. Russians bet on him as early as in 2015 and provided for his personal security. Nobody in Syria enjoyed bodyguards from Russia, not even Assad. He was the only commander who won de facto battles during the 10 days of the fall of Syria. In the midst of a tyrant of doom and gloom, what's taking place fast as lightning is NATO Israel feeding on the carcass and dividing a dead nation with a gaggle of useful idiots and puppets, from fake woke Salafi jihadis to Americanized Kurds. Obviously, a collective IQ lower than any room temperature prevent this mob from realizing they're fighting for the same suzerain. Okay, a suzerain, of course, is a king, okay, or ruler. And in this case, he's referring to Israel, I believe, as opposed to Turkey. Tel Aviv goons have advanced their blitzkrieg across the Damascus countryside and may be as close as 15 kilometers to the south of the capital, a classic Lebensraum type of gambit, part of their colonial project, coupled with obtaining the maximum amount of leverage on the Lebanese flank. This is absolutely crucial and extremely worrying for the axis of resistance. Now all of southern Lebanon is exposed to a massive attack by the Israeli occupation, as the fertile plains between Shatura in the Bekaa Valley and Anjar not only hold precious natural resources, but provide a direct drive to Beirut. Wow. Scorpions turn on each other, so I never realized that the fertile plains there uh, were protecting Beirut, and that if they fell to anyone else by the Syrians, they would provide a direct way to attack it. That's very significant. Scorpions turn on each other. In parallel, black flags have taken over Damascus. There are massacres all across the spectrum, including religious leaders and scientists, but mostly army officials, former members of Syrian counterespionage, even civilians accused of being the former military. His Eminence Sheikh Tawfiq al-Budi, son of the famous Sheikh Mohammed Saeed Ramadan al-Budi, a former imam of the venerable the Umayyad Mosque, was assassinated in his Damascus Madras. Scorpions are predictably turning on each other. Rival gangs to Hayat Tahrir al-Sham demand that Jolani's goons liberate their members imprisoned in Greater Idlibistan and now threaten to attack HTS. Okay. In Manbij, Turk-backed terrorists openly kill Americano Kurds in hospitals. I'm not sure what Americano Kurds are exactly, as opposed to just simply Kurds. But okay, Syria's north and northeast are mired in total anarchy. Tribes that refuse to accept the Americano Kurds and their communist secular state project, and also refuse to join the Turk-backed Salafi jihadi terror network, now branded as, quote, ISIS, unquote, and are duly bombed by U.S. fighter jets. Some may indeed still be ISIS. They were before the fall of 2017, and there are still crypto-ISIS remnants that are roaming the desert. It's so hard to keep track who's ISIS, who's HTS, who's ISIL, who's Al Qaeda. They all seem to blend together. Going on. The Russian army has positioned their ships as far as 8 kilometers away from the Tartus naval base. That does not provide total security because they still can be reached by drones and artillery, as well as small boats. For the aviation and the Baymim air base, that's even more complicated. Moscow has already sent a clear message. If the base is touched, blowback will be devastating. HTS, for its part, has been mostly focused on occupying Latakia. For those who want to visualize this, the city of Aleppo is the northernmost city. As you go south, to the west of Aleppo, is the Latakia area. And that area, which is host to the naval base of Russia. As you go south from there, you come to Hama, and then to Homs, and then to Damascus, going south, and then to the Golan, to the critical plains, and beyond those to the Golan Heights. The future of the Russian bases remains a mystery. That will depend on a thorny, direct bargaining session between Putin, and Erdogan. Jolani, the de facto new caliph of al-Sham, will not become leader at this initial stage because he does not scare most Syrians to death, irrespective of his mega scripted, quote, road to Damascus, unquote, woke conversion. He will be self appointed, quote, as military chief, unquote. There will be a designated puppet, a man by the name of Mohammed al Bashir, who will be conducting the, quote, transition, unquote, up to March 2025. It's virtually certain al Bashir will be abhorred by virtually all factions. That will pave the way for repentant head chopper Jolani to stage a coup and grab unlimited power. It was in Syria, okay, in Antioch, one of the most formidable cities of the Roman Empire, that the disciples of Jesus were denominated, quote, Christians, unquote, from the Greek Christianos, which I believe was the Greek word for followers of the Messiah. Antioch has been reduced to the small town, okay, of Antakya and is part of Turkey. Sultan Erdogan dreams, okay, of Aleppo is also part of Turkey. And of course, he is expected to grab Aleppo as part of the changes in Syria. Okay, right now, okay, Aleppo is a city of 2 million. It's the second city, okay, of Syria. It's the industrial base of Syria. To compare it to Damascus in population, it is nearly as large. It is 2 million people. Also, Damascus is 2.3 million people. So the two cities have comparable population and comparable importance to Syria. Once Turkey takes Aleppo, it is unlikely ever to give it up again. Greek was the language of this corner of the Roman Empire. Latin was only used by the occupiers, the military, okay, and management. The church, led by the Patriarch of Antioch, developed all across Syria, all the way to the Euphrates. Will the collective West rise to defend Syrian Christians when the black flags come to purge them as they will? Of course not. The collective West keeps gloating on the end of the, quote, dictator, unquote, as black flags and Old Testament, the vultures stage their vampires' ball over the corpse of a nation. That too is a wonderful image by Pepe. Their vampires' ball. You can visualize the blood dripping from their lips, right? So there we go. That was a terrific piece and packed with a lot of information, by the way, okay, about the regions of Syria, the various regions, what's happening in the first stages of the aftermath of the coup, of the overthrow, okay, of Assad. It is, of course, not a pretty picture and not a hopeful one for Syria. Okay, Dee, would you like to take on the second of the articles?
Okay. She should stop soon. Olive. Yeah, she should be stopping.
Would you like me to share it or would you like to share it?
Why don't you share it?
Okay. I will present it then.
So here we have hellos here. Everybody's saying hello. And it's so good to see Steve Wolfbrand again. It really is.
Okay, go ahead, Dee.
Okay. Turkish Opportunism and multi-polarity in Syria. Hmm. Okay, and you can bring it down more.
Okay, this one is by Eric Stryker, December 9th, 2024.
Yes.
Never shared one of his articles before here, but this is a very interesting piece.
Okay.
Okay, go on, Dean.
Okay. The fall of Bashar al-Assad's government in Syria marks a turning point. Prior to the start of the 2011 civil war, Syrians were among the most highly educated people in the Arab world. Syria's flourishing middle class, high quality universities, and advanced pharmaceutical industry allowed them to punch above their weight class in influencing the Middle East. As a middle power, Assad's Ba'athist social nationalist government sought to retain good ties with all the players, including the United States, at one point, though its commitment to combating Zionist expansionism ultimately led to its targeting for destruction by the very United States it had sought to keep good terms with. With Iran and Russia behind it, Syrian forces emerged victorious over Zionist-backed Islamist forces in 2018, but this victory was incomplete and led to a period of stagnation in the country. Syria had been unable to recover from the brain drain wrought by the exodus of educated professionals, teachers, physicians, engineers, etc., to Europe and Turkey. The strict sanctions regimen imposed on Syria by the United States and other Zionist powers had made it difficult for the state to participate in global commerce, leading to economic isolation and stagnation. A culture of corruption and cynicism has flourished under the weakened and demoralized uh, Assad, seen everywhere, from the organized crime groups recruiting the country's unemployed chemists to becoming the region's top producer of crystal meth, and Captagon to the sad display of Syrian Arab army forces unable to move tanks and airplanes to confront rebels due to their commanders having stolen and sold all the fuel.
Well, that's interesting. I'd never seen anybody point that out before.
Mm-hmm.
As a factor, okay, in the takeover. They weren't able to move their tanks.
Yeah, I mean, it's terrible.
They weren't able to move their airplanes.
All of this because of Zionist expansionist goals.
Zionist expansionist goals, but also the corruption.
Yeah, well, the corruption came about because of the sanctions,
Yes,
because they wouldn't go along with the Zionist expansion goals.
yes.
Both Russia and Iran have their own reasons for wanting to cut their losses with Assad. The two nations are distracted with their own existential wars against the American Israeli Zionist order, which is why the Russian presence in Syria was small, a handful of jets, and the Iranian one was already withdrawing from strategic areas such as Idlib. Hezbollah's supply routes, which run through Homs and Palmyra, were highly surveilled and regularly targeted by Israel, sometimes attacked a dozen times a day, likely due to corrupt Syrian officers informing on them to Zionists, making these routes increasingly difficult to use. In one instance, IRGC experts were killed by an Israeli airstrike just blocks away from Assad's private residence, which Iranian intelligence traced to information obtained from bought off Syrian officials. Yet Assad demonstrated a lack of will or capacity to root out the compromised operatives.
Okay, just to interrupt here for a second. Uh, this article is the first I've seen that refers to the bombing of the supply routes.
Hmm.
Now, previously we were kind of, led to believe by most accounts that the supply routes up from Iran through Syria, up going to Lebanon, to Hezbollah, were pretty safe supply routes. Very
Mhm.
important because they were safe uh, and somehow protected by Syria. But what he's saying here is that these supply routes were always contested by Israel, sometimes attacked, even a dozen times a day. And yet the supplies, one has to conclude, in other words, this paragraph implies that in spite of the attacks, the supplies still got through to Hezbollah.
Mhm.
So the question I'm raising here is how much more hostile, okay, is the current environment, with the collapse of Syrian authority? I mean, the same people would be around there, I suppose, informing the Zionists.
Mhm.
The same attacks from the air, would be going on. Would it really be so materially worse that the Iranians would not be able to supply Hezbollah?
I think they still will be able to. I don't see where that would
Yes, I
change.
think they still will be able to also. It may be somewhat more difficult, but it's not going to be like a night and day difference.
Yeah, 'cause that's what you hear from some media, mainly Western media.
Well, not only Western media, even when you hear, Scott Erder talking about the importance of the supply lines, Doug McGregor talking about the importance of the supply lines, you sort of have the impression that the supply lines were safe. And even though I'm sure those people were quite aware of the Israeli attacks on supply lines, I think they've underestimated the importance of those attacks, over a period, okay, of years. Uh, anyway, this is the first article which has emphasized to me that was the situation. It raises some thinking on my part also. Okay, that if the Iranians were to go through with that very large attack that they've been planning for so long, and if they were to successfully destroy the Israeli air bases, then, uh, even given the relative state of anarchy in Syria, what would be there to stop the supply lines, okay, from working? In other words, the supply lines uh, 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 might be even more obstacle free than they were before the coup.
Mhm.
Okay, if the air bases in Israel were destroyed, and the Iranians supposedly have the capability to destroy those air bases.
Mhm. Plus, on the shows that we had over it's almost 2 years now, but it just seemed every month Syria was getting, hit by Israel, and they were always saying that uh, with supply, referencing, with ammunition, supplies, blah, blah, blah. Every month, sometimes it could be twice a month, but it was going on for a long time that Syria was getting bombed by Israel.
But this article is saying sometimes attacked a dozen times a day.
Yeah. So I mean, they brought up that like you said, others weren't bringing up that for a while now, over a year, could be 2 years, three, but it's. I mean, we've had it on the show, and all of a sudden, there you go, Syria's being hit again by Israel.
It was being hit again, and this article implies, they were getting hit along the supply lines on
Yeah, a lot.
a basis.
Hmm. It was like a routine.
Yeah, it was like a routine. It's one of the things the Israeli Air Force has been doing every day,
Hmm.
flying missions to Syria to cut off the supply lines. Significantly, they still haven't been able to cut off the supply lines. So
No.
you have to raise the question, will they be able to cut them off now, or will the Iranians just send in convoys with air defenses, okay, and handle what the Israelis are trying to do, which they would be especially successful at, okay, if the Iranians would start things off with that 2000 missile attack
Hmm.
they've been promising
Yes.
or implying. Okay, please go on.
Okay. On the Russian side of the equation, Moscow has been frustrated with Assad's inability to combat corruption or make an effort to bring about an official end to conflict. Both Russia and Iran have sought to reintegrate Syria in a post-American geopolitical environment, but Assad was intransigent, despite being the weakest party in the alliance. Following the 2023 Chinese brokered detente between Iran and Saudi Arabia, which whipped the rug from underneath Washington's feet, an attempt was made by Beijing, Moscow, and Tehran to organize a solution to conflicting Turkish and Syrian interests. Assad rejected this offer, stating that negotiations were off the table until Turkish troops withdrew from Syrian territory. Turkey has emerged as a highly antagonistic but transactional actor, leveraging its massive army, network of terrorists, and intelligence apparatus at times to do the bidding of America and Israel when their interests uh, intersect, but also carving out a sovereignist position that also deals with Russia and Iran when it benefits Ankara. Yes, and we've seen that.
Yeah, we've seen that. I want to add here, just remind people, okay, that Turkey has the largest army inside of NATO, 500,000 strong, very well equipped. Uh, they're trained very well and are purported to be very, very good fighters.
The Armenian Azerbaijani war exemplifies this dynamic. The Armenian government, which had made its own bed by publicly insulting and seeking to distance itself from its Russian and Iranian allies in hopes of winning the favor of America, Israel, and Western Europe, was instead caught isolated and alone when Turkish and Israeli backed Azeri forces launched a sudden invasion of Nagorno Karabakh in late 2020. Both Russia and Iran avoided a potential war with Turkey by staying out of its way. In exchange, they have reaped tangible benefits from allowing the Turks to achieve their objectives in what they see as the Nechara sphere of influence. In the aftermath of the Armenian conflict, Azerbaijan, under Turkish protection, has defied Washington by providing a trade corridor for Russia to transport goods to Iran, as well as becoming a vital lifeline for Russian energy amidst Ukrainian sanctions. Turkey has in the past defied Washington largely because America increasingly needs Turkey more than Turkey needs America. Turkey has been regarding regularly bombing Kurdish communist groups who have since 2018 served as the main American asset in Syria, such as the YPG, and have especially defied Washington in regards to their relations with Russia.
Okay, so I have to remark on that as well. Uh, it's striking to me uh, that America would be supporting communist groups. I mean, there's some very strange things here in
Hmm.
Syria. Like, what are we doing supporting the jihadis? What are we doing supporting the communist groups?
I know, right?
I mean, this is all totally amazing.
Hmm.
Okay, please go on.
Turkey's emergence as a regional power is an issue neither the United States or Russia appear capable of combating, and both seek to get what they can out of the new reality. In Syria, there appears to have been similar arrangements to the one over Armenia behind closed doors between Assad's government, Iran, Turkey, and Russia, who are currently meeting in Doha without any official American, Western, or Israeli presence. Hussein Abish of The Atlantic believes a post Assad Syria could be divided up among ethno religious lines, with Russia being able to maintain its port in Tartus through an Alawite protectorate.
Okay, just to be clear about that here, the Alawites are the sect from which the Assad family came. Okay, they are uh, a sect of Shiite uh, Islam, and they're relatively, small minority, though substantial, inside of Syria, something like I think 10 to 15%, or something like that. But historically, they were very important, and they were part of the ruling class, okay, of Syria. Okay, and they're concentrated around the Latakia area, where the port is. Okay, and that was the area that Bashar Assad, uh, when he wanted to leave, he took a helicopter to that area, and from there he caught a Russian flight from their airbase. Okay, and he flew to Moscow, and he has asylum, in Moscow now, with his family. His wife had been being treated in Moscow for cancer for quite a long time. Okay, please go on.
As for Iran, which media outlets and analysts are declaring the biggest loser, which I don't think so, from Assad's fall, it would be more prudent to wait and see what happens. Hayat at Tahrir al-Sham (HTS), the Islamist militia serving as Turkey's proxy, has sought to distance itself from its al-Qaeda origins and so far avoided organized persecution of Christians and Shiites, as Iranian media has testified. Such a development suggests that they are under Turkish orders to believe in a restrained fashion, perhaps through an agreement with Russia and Iran. While HTS is unlikely to have launched its offensive with Hezbollah being forced to surge its material and men to South Lebanon, they have sent message to Shia fighters that they do not seek hostilities with them.
Okay, please continue.
The status of the weapons transfer corridor, excuse me, to Hezbollah, however, could be in jeopardy, and Israel has capitalized on this by pushing into Syrian territory.
Okay, so it's very interesting that he says the transfer corridor could be jeopardized. Uh, of all the articles we've read so far, that's the weakest statement I've seen
hmm
uh, concerning the jeopardy of the weapons transfer corridor. But all the other statements have been stronger, even those that have expressed some doubt that the corridor would be completely destroyed.
But ultimately, both the United States and Israel appear to be in the passenger seat at the behest of Turkey. There is potential for Iran to convince Sunni militants in the new Syrian government to preserve their ability to support Hezbollah out of anti-Israel solidarity, rather than a carefully calibrated Western-led regime change. The renewed Turkish aggression appears to be in the context of a vacuum in Central Asia and the Near East that a weakened Washington has no choice but to support on Ankara's terms, which they prefer to Iranian or Russian influence, but which is also introduces variables out of Washington's control.
I think that's a very important point made there,
hmm
which again I have not seen, made in any other place.
As NATO member, Turkey has long sought to utilize strategic agreements with America and Israel for its own morally ambiguous economic and geopolitical self-interest, including maintaining the financially lucrative oil pipeline to Israel, but they nevertheless reserve the right to retain a degree of independence. Turkey has been diligent in demanding the U.S. break ties with its Kurdish fighters in Syria, and while HTS rebels have largely avoided major battles with Iran-backed Shia groups and Russian forces, both the Turkish military and its what's that IITS are currently eviscerating the positions long held by U.S.-backed Syrian democratic forces who are Kurdish in northern Syria, while Washington impotently tells them to stop.
Yes, those are the supposed communists.
Hmm.
Of the Syrian Democratic Forces, who are Kurdish,
Yes.
are also the ones getting smeared as communists. Okay.
It is unclear in the immediate aftermath if America and Israel are really the major winners or simply opportunistically getting their licks amidst the chaos. Turkey has likely already agreed with the U.S. to allow Israel to steal Syrian territory in exchange for a free hand. But this doesn't mean Iran won't also be allowed to develop an alternative way to aid its allies in Lebanon in a separate agreement. One can recall the aftermath of Saddam Hussein overthrown by the U.S. due to his stalwart opposition to Israel and replaced with a weak puppet regime that ultimately created an unforeseen vacuum, allowing Iran to cultivate a new and increasingly important branch of its axis of resistance via popular mobilization units.
Oh, yeah, that's very important. Those are the Iraqi resistance,
hmm
and they've been increasingly aggressive in supporting Hezbollah.
hmm For Iran, which appears to be preparing for a war with the incoming Trump administration, avoiding an intervention in Syria preserves weapons and funds needed in Lebanon and at home, but also avoids reigniting cooling sectarian tensions by avoiding attacking Sunnis to preserve the rule of a Shia minority. The prospect of unchallenged American hegemony in Syria, which would have transpired without outside intervention in the 2011 civil war, is an acute threat to both Iran and Russia, so the decision to allow the rebels to take Damascus should be observed with this in mind. The truth of the matter is that the rebels, armed with Turkey's state-of-the-art drones and other new battlefield dynamics, the Syrian army was unprepared to defend its against were easier to accommodate than fight. The big
Uh,
pic, yeah, it was. It was just the whole situation was
of course, with no oil for its tanks, okay, and planes.
right, and you know how weakened the country had been with the
Yes, it's not surprising that the Syrian army was unprepared to defend themselves.
right,
You
the
know, I,
big
I mean, how could they?
right.
I don't
Yep.
know if their defeat was due to the state of the art drones. It was probably due just to the absence of the gas for their tanks and planes.
Right, and their equipment wasn't like the state of the art stuff either. Like from what I've read, that they older stuff.
Yeah.
The big picture mission for Iran in the new security landscape is to undercut American and Israeli machinations by uniting Shia and Sunni Muslims for the Palestinian cause, which appears to be bearing some fruit. Iran has successfully pitched a united front against Israel to win over unlikely Sunni militant allies such as Hamas and the Taliban in Afghanistan. Detente between Saudi Arabia and Iran seems to be taking the form of entente, as seen with the two countries' increased military cooperation. Last March, Hezbollah's foreign minister Waf Safa was welcomed by officials in the Sunni United Arab Emirates, considered by many to be a pivot away from the United States. In Lebanon, Sunni militias, once seen as rivals of Hezbollah, have put aside their differences to fight alongside the Shia resistance group against Israel. The hard truth for Gulf states, who under the first Trump administration were being organized into a proxy army for Israel. Oh, ouch, a dog just sat on me. Proxy Israel for, lost my spot here. Proxy army for Israel is that the Yemen war, where Saudi oil refineries were destroyed, showed them the United States is unable or unwilling to provide them with the kind of security guarantees needed for them to fight Iran and its allies. It will remain to be seen what Trump's second administration, which is directed almost exclusively by Israel's well being, will offer to bring the Saudis back to the negotiating tables. The U.S. and Israel unleashing the Turkish juggernaut could be interpreted as a recalibration and reaction to increased collaboration between Shia and Sunni nations elsewhere, who have been brought together by the genocide in Gaza as well as the rise of BRICS. Through Turkey, though Turkey is a Sunni nation, various Arab states from Egypt to Saudi Arabia fear the Muslim Brotherhood and other forms of political Islam backed by Ankara. One could argue that empowering Turkey, which has decent relations with Russia, could also drive a wedge between Moscow and Tehran in the long run, as most of the Middle East, including Iran, reject neo Ottoman influence. It is a it is a it is doubtful that relying on Turkey was Washington's first choice in the Middle East. Comparison could be made with the Atlanticist embrace of Joseph Stalin during the Second World War. The Turks, both as society and state, largely reject the liberal values America and its Jewish policymakers seek to impose on the world, especially in the realm of foreign policy. In the last 2 years, Turkey has sought to circumvent Western sanctions on Iran and outright refuses to acknowledge their sanctions on Russia, seemingly unafraid of any Western retaliation. The nightmare of trying to control Turkey is bound to cause the liberal West a major headache down the line. Recep Erdogan's stated imperial ambitions do not stop at Armenia and Syria. He has also repeatedly called for increasing influence or outright invading his supposed NATO allies, Greece, Bulgaria, and Romania.
Oh God.
Crazy. Turkey functions as a gangster state, extorting Europe out of billions of dollars by threatening to flood the continent with migrants. Whatever short-term benefits to their geopolitical infrastructure the US and Israel obtain from helping unleash Turkish savagery on the world is tantamount to running with scissors. Crazy. Though it is too early to tell, the largest bloodless and apparently consensual exit of Assad, with the US and Israel as beneficiaries, but still secondary actors, could be looked back upon as a product of multi-polarity rather than what is it? Refutation of it, refuting it. Yeah.
Yes, I certainly agree with that. It could be looked upon as a product of multipolarity. Okay, because Turkey is getting more and more powerful in the context of a multipolar world, where it can turn to many other allies apart from the United States.
Hmm.
Of course, it has to be careful not to alienate those other allies because it has a tendency to betray everybody in order to pursue its own interest.
We've seen that.
Yeah, that's a problem. I want to comment also on the comments that, okay, there was the comment about the Turks, but not having the same values as the Americans, okay, and the Israelis. I thought that was an interesting sort of comment. Uh, uh, they say the Turks, both as a society and state, largely reject the liberal values of America and its Jewish policymakers seek to impose on the world. And I was about to question those particular values because uh, it seems that one value the Turks have in common with America and some of the policymakers here who are Jewish, like Tony Blinken, of course,
Hmm.
okay, is that they both seem to favor genocide. Of course, the Turks somewhat object to the genocide in Israel when it suits them from time to time, but they don't seem to be rejecting the idea of genocide in Syria when it comes to the Kurds. In other words, there they seem to want to approach that certainly, and most famously, of course, a long time ago they were responsible, for the Armenian genocide. So I'm not sure that the elites of those countries don't have that particular value in common.
Yeah, that's a good point. They have some values in common.
Yes, and they are unfortunate ones. So
Okay.
okay, so uh, we're getting late on time.
Do you want to go over some comments, or
Okay, yes, I do want to go over some comments, but
you want to get into another article? Yeah.
no, I don't want to get into another article quite yet. I was
Okay.
going to say that I had an article by Jeffrey Sachs that was scheduled, which was a very good one.
Hmm.
But uh, there's an important kind of activity I want to cover uh, by Scott, uh, which I came to fairly late. So I don't think I'm going to have time for the Jeffrey Sachs article here. Okay, so I'm going to skip over that.
Well, you could. I only have two articles for my show, so you can always present something on my show if you'd like.
Okay, that will be great. So what I'll do is I'll save the Jeffrey Sachs article. Okay, for your show then.
Okay.
Thank you for that. And okay, I will put that back up here. Okay, so I can use it there. And meantime, I think we will take a few comments before we go on because the comments are certainly important. Uh, Steve has had phone problems. Wow.
Yeah, 'cause I was wondering what was going on.
Yep. Evelyn asks, "Hi Joe, did you see Nima's interview with Dmitry Orlov?" No, I did not see that. Okay, the Earl of Lurie says hello. Wolfbrand says hi, Earl. Evelina says, "Did you D? If so, what did you make of it?"
Um, I'm thinking right now because we all kind of, as it's we when we kept hearing the with the bombings that were going on, with Israel bombing Syria all the time, um, and they would always blame it on Iran and blaming it. We kind of question what was going on. They never really went into detail, but I was trying to think because I know Madeline would be not again, not again. Because it was just constant with this. You know, it was they just had this where they would cause problems with Gaza. They were causing problems in the West Bank, and then bombing
Cause,
Syria. It was just a
just,
routine.
yes, it's just a routine. Okay, but Evelina is asking you whether you saw the interview with Orlov.
Oh no, I didn't.
Okay, so you didn't see it either. But anyway, Evelina's asking a question. Orlov said Assad bought real estate in Russia and that he is no longer Syrian. Uh,
Interesting.
yeah, I find that very interesting. I guess he must have been planning to retire to Russia. I think he was tired of running Syria after 24 years. He never meant to run it anyway.
No.
And in recent years, it's been increasingly difficult and dangerous to do so. So maybe he was planning on, becoming Russian.
Right.
At this point in the history of the world, he could be planning worse things. But anyway,
Right. And the fact, he has the children, his wife and his children. I mean, what would his children? It would be the same thing. If they would have saved Syria, then you would have, the next generation and the battles that I think it's easier just to start fresh in Russia.
okay. Evelyn also points out that early Orlov said that Erdogan is no longer making decisions in Turkey, that he has Alzheimer's. Uh,
I didn't know that.
all I can say about that is if that's true, he's obviously not the only one.
Right. It seems to be going around, right?
Seems to be going around. Okay, let us get to the last part of this because it's 9:04 and you're starting at 9:15. But I
Ye-
wanted people to note, because it's very important, that Trump recently said something about the attackums. Uh, he called the attackam strikes on Russia foolish, quote unquote, and he went on. Uh, his decision to permit Ukraine to use American supplied long range missiles on targets inside Russia was, quote, foolish, unquote, and a, quote, major escalation, unquote, in the conflict, according to President elect Donald Trump, who said, quote, anything can happen. It's a very volatile situation, unquote. He also said the Ukraine conflict in an interview with Time on November 25th, published on Thursday, quote, I think the most dangerous thing right now is what's happening where Zelensky has decided, with the approval of, I assume, the president, to start shooting missiles into Russia. I think that's a major escalation. I think it's a foolish decision, unquote. Uh, on Thursday, Time announced Trump as the Person of the Year, an accolade given to the individual, group, or thing that, quote, for better or for worse, did the most to shape the world in the headlines over the past 12 months. Well, I don't know. I guess I would say that the person of the year is probably Biden, because he did the most to shape the world for the worst over the past 12 months. Anyway,
Oh,
Biden,
God.
Biden gave the green light for Ukraine to use Army tactical missile systems or ATACMS for the strikes in November, following repeated requests to do so from President Zelensky. Uh, okay, so it goes through the history of the use of the ATACMS. But anyway, Trump's statement included, quote, "I disagree very vehemently with sending missiles hundreds of miles into Russia," quote, Trump said in his interview with Time. Quote, "Why are we doing that? We're just escalating this war and making it worse. That should not have been allowed to be done." Uh, so, uh, he also was quoted as saying, quote, "I would imagine people are waiting until I get in before anything happens," unquote. I would imagine, I think that would be very smart to do that. So he's sort of implying he's going to overturn that move. Uh, Now, in a stream today, but Garland Nixon and Scott Ritter, especially Scott, um, gave great importance to that particular statement. Uh, okay, while not, okay, make sure you click on share, right? Okay, so let me click on share here. I didn't want to share something else, specifically the final moments of what was a very long live stream, close to 2 hours, uh, by Garland Nixon, okay, and Scott Ritter. I have no time, of course, to play quite a lot of this live stream. Well, it was an hour and 44 minutes. But I can start at a minute and a minute and 33 seconds in, because the import of the statement by Trump uh, okay, is that Trump seems to be sending a clear message to Russia here, that he wants to talk peace, and he's holding out the olive branch of stopping the ATACMS, okay, to do that. Garland uh, and Scott, who are together uh, 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 in an effort to alert the American public and the Congress to the dangers of nuclear war, specifically over the issue of sending the ATACMS to Russia, but also who are also trying to inform the people of the general efforts of the Biden administration to keep us in the war and to ratchet up the tensions and to bring us closer, okay, to nuclear war. Uh, they are seeing uh, 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 their efforts now as having some effect, and that news of their efforts got into the Trump campaign, and that they may have had some role in motivating this particular statement by Trump. So, okay. Anyway, I recommend this whole stream to people. But what I want to go over here is final statements by Scott, okay, on this particular stream. So let's see if we can get by the buffering here.
um, you know, of self-defense. If you can start getting a deal, you may be in a position to talk to the North Koreans. I'm not saying you'll get anything with anybody. You know what I mean? As we keep saying, you may be in a position to open a dialogue with these people via the Russians and, of course, the Chinese. I hope Xi Jinping shows up here. I think it would be smart for him.
Okay, so that was the point. One other thing Trump did was to invite Xi Jinping to the inauguration. on January 20th, which is a very interesting move by Trump. Continuing on.
I think it would be really wise for him to come in and to, like, I don't know, bring a panda or something. You know what I mean? How they always do. Bring a gift, bring a couple of pandas. Here you go, Donald Trump. Let's start off on the right foot. You know what I mean? And I don't know if it's going to work, but I think there is an opportunity now, if we just make it through the race to January 20th, it could all go bad. Scott and I are not saying that Donald Trump is going to come in and fix everything. We're saying right now, with these lunatics we have, there is no chance of anything getting anything but worse. They are untethered. They are unchained. January 20th, you can have a positive attitude and say, let's see what happens. And in the same way, Scott, and I think this isn't critical, people always feel like there's nothing I can do, right? I think with our no to nuclear war thing, with you and other people visiting people in Congress, I think we're looking at statements coming out of the Trump camp. I think one of the lessons here is that everyday ordinary people, a lot of people after that were tweeting or Xing, whatever it is, posting on Twitter too. I saw him to Marjorie Taylor Greene. I saw him to various members, to Trump, to Musk. I saw people doing posts from our no to nuclear war thing to the people in the powers that be, potentially saying, hey guys, look what's going on here. Look what people are doing. Did you know this is going on today? Maybe you can watch a little bit of it. It being that regular people like us and the people in the chat don't give up hope, defy, and some of the stuff we're doing is having an effect. That's what I'm trying to end it up with, Scott. Final comment.
There's no doubt we had an effect. I mean, I'm not somebody who believes in futility. When I started this Operation Dawn, to drive against nuclear war back in September, to try and, inject, no nuclear war into the political mainstream. A lot of people are like, well, what do you expect to accomplish? Well, one of the great accomplishments of this was getting an op-ed piece written by Donald Trump Jr. and RFK Jr. on behalf of the Trump administration, published in The Hill, that said they need to bring it into this war in Ukraine, and they need to pull back on nuclear war. Now, Trump was inclined to do that, but this compelled that to be written and injected at the time that it was. It had a major influence in shaping the mindset of the campaign. And the ATACMS, the emphasis is placed on the ATACMS missile as the trigger for nuclear war. I will tell you that what we've done is get a whole bunch of attention to this issue. We've also coalesced. I mean, one of the things we found in walking through Congress is that while everybody was aware of this, many people who were sympathetic to the cause didn't realize that a bill had actually been written and prepared that specifically addressed this issue. And so we were being able to get people to start communicating with one another. It wasn't that we were just bringing in an important idea. We're bringing in an idea that a lot of people agreed upon, but because they're Republican and Democrat, they're not talking to each other. And so we were able to be the people that would walk across that boundary and bring that attention and get the process going. So I'm very proud of what we've done, Garland. I thank you for being a part of it. I thank everybody who was a part of it. The concept that we, the people, can't have an impact on issues of critical importance has been proven wrong by what we've done here. Hopefully there is no nuclear war. Hopefully we're able to move forward. But and if there isn't a nuclear war, this isn't one of those cases where you say, well, gosh, we're lucky on that one. There's not going to be a nuclear war because people like you, me, and others worked really hard to prevent a nuclear war, injected ideas into the mainstream, influenced decision makers, um, and got an outcome that we wanted. And so we're not there yet, but we're almost there. And that meme I did, 1 in 14 million, guys, we're down to about 1 in 5 right now. After Trump's response, we're about a 50-50 chance right now to stop a nuclear war. Okay? It was 1 in 14 million back in on November 5th. It's 50-50 right now because of the work that we are all doing. So keep doing it. Don't rest on your laurels. Don't say, okay, I don't have to worry about it. No, 50-50 is bad odds. Those aren't good odds. That means half the time we lose. So let's get the odds down to as close to 100% that there won't be a nuclear war. And that means that we continue to talk about this. If you're an American citizen, pick up the phone and call your representatives and tell them about this bill, about the ATACMS issue. And, and if you say, what bill? Go to my website, scottritter.com. You'll see I've written about this extensively. There's links to the bill there, who you need to call.
Okay, so I'm going to stop it right there because we're running out of time. But you get, the point. Scott Ritter and the people that he's been working with and people who have been speaking in support of them or showing their efforts, such as myself, are seemingly more optimistic about things now, thinking that we're starting to have an impact and maybe even have had an impact on the Trump administration. Or on the coming Trump administration. I suppose I should have said an impact on the Trump campaign. So having said that, I'm going to stop sharing this now and look at your final comments. So, I'm able to go over and to give some help to Dee on her stream. So there are no further comments, actually. So I think I'm going to end this stream here. And I urge you all to follow me over to Dee's. Okay, Monica Augustine has just checked in. Thank you for checking in. But we are about to leave here and go over to Around the World, with Dee and Friends. Okay, because Dee just has started a stream and she's expecting my help, on her program. And I'm going to go over there, and give it to her. So thank you all very much for coming here tonight. Attendance was down a little, but it was decent. And I want to thank all of you for coming. And I'll be back on Saturday night, at 9 p.m. Most probably again with an international relations show because so many things are happening these days. So thank you very much for coming and good night. And hopefully I'll see you at Dee's.